This video is sponsored by JNC Collectibles website at jnccollectibles.com. Be sure to check them out for all your TCG needs, from sealed products to sleeves to playmats. Link is in the description box below. Thank you, and back to the video.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to This is JNC Jib. Today we're doing an unscripted video. We're talking about the state of the current competitive game. We have my beautiful chat here with me. We're live right now on twitch.tv/jib_YGO. Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because it's really sparked by this morning. Sunsi just said that she's quitting right now. She's quitting the competitive TCG. She gave a few reasons of why she's quitting, and I know a handful of high level players who are also taking a step back and currently quitting or taking long hiatuses from the game because of a multitude of reasons. I think the first one that I would like to talk about that most people are discussing is the prize pool. While I agree that the prizing in Yu-Gi-Oh right now is lackluster for topping, like top 32 getting a rubber playmat, which is like the same thing you get at getting top 8 at a regional. Via, it's a different mat, but getting top 32 and only getting a playmat, getting top 8, getting a Nintendo Switch, the only time that it feels like worth it is if you get top 3 or higher. Obviously first place through third getting prize cards, super through ultra. And as of recently, they've made the prize cards, while more symbolic being the another verse cards, they've made them a lot worse. Where before we had cards like Minerva, cards like Mind Hacker, Giant Hand, cards that were competitively viable, especially like cards like Minerva. And even later on we saw like Mind Hacker, which on release wasn't very competitive but ended up being very competitive in Kashtira. Also cards like I'm rambling, but cards like the Chaos Dragon, Pendulum Monster, etc., which had real value, right, because they were competitively viable. Instead of doing that, Konami has opted to give us more symbolic prize cards that they while have no effect, have like cool flavor text, which is I find is kind of cool, but it does definitely affect the prices of these cards and make them a lot less valuable and sought after. So that is an issue. How do I feel about that? I feel that there are a couple ways that Konami could solve this problem if they really, really wanted to. The easiest one, in my opinion, is to serialize cards for Top Cut. For people who don't know what that is, like, it's something that is done in other card games. The one that I want to bring up is One Piece, where what they do is in Top Cut, they give out cards that already exist, but they have a Top Cut stamp on them. And once you get to the top 3, it'll say like first place, second place, third place, like gold, silver, bronze versions of those cards with official stamps. I feel like if Konami released popular Yu-Gi-Oh cards with like YCS stamps on them, serializing them for Top Cut, I think that would kind of solve a little bit of the issue that we're having. Especially, I think what they would probably end up doing is like Dark Magician cards or like Blue Eyes White Dragon cards, which that would have value in the collector's market because those are like the faces of the game. But even if they wanted to go even further and like do that for important staple cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, cards like Lightning Storm, etc., Impermanence, go through the hand trap, go through the Ghost Girl hand traps and serialize them. I think that would bring a lot of value to the prize cards. Also, another thing that they can do is probably try like full arts. I know some people have mentioned that Konami has never really done that. We've seen something very close to that in Rush Duels, where they have like full art cards in Rush Duel. Why I don't see a reason why they can't bring that to the TCG in order to get some more interest into the prizing. I think that full arts would also solve this issue. They just have to make the prizing worth competing for some people. For some people, The reason to compete is for the glory and to win. People want to win, but I think once you win an event, the what am I trying to say? The luster or the little keys that's jangling in your face is gone. So for a person like Sunsi Jess, who is a European champion, who has gotten top 8 at the World Championship, people like Chris Urena, who's a 5-time YCS champion, Gabriel Susi, European champion, like the allure of winning an event, while obviously winning an event still feels great, I imagine, right? And I've talked to them, they're like, yeah, it still feels great, but that ultimate goal of winning an event is no longer there for them. They've been there, done that. So now it's coming down to time investment and then a reward for your investment. And a lot of players are feeling like it's not there anymore, that they're spending all this time preparing for events and what they're getting in return isn't worth the time that they're putting in. I feel like a lot of players don't understand the amount of time it takes in order to prepare for a YCS. I think that's a whole video in and of itself that we can talk about, but I think that people really don't know how long it takes to prepare for a YCS. And I'm telling you from my own personal experience of being able to do well at YCSs consistently for the most part, it takes a long time in order to be comfortable enough to go to a YCS and top and forget about winning. It takes, and this is not an exaggeration, probably upwards of like 100+ hours before the event in order to get to that space where you're ready to just do well. This leads me into the second thing that Sunsi just talked about, and I think that it is true for this specific format. And I heard some people talk about it, but other people were kind of like denying it and kind of like talking around it. And I've talked to some very high players and we've talked among ourselves, and like I feel like the format right now is very much exaggerating the issue that some people have with the return on investment. Because while Yu-Gi-Oh, in my opinion, is still pretty fun right now, it's like relatively fun. I can't say it's very fun right now. It's because it's not. The format is terrible at the moment, but we are getting a ban list, so there is a shot that things get better. But at the moment, the format is terrible, and you're not really rewarded for testing super hard right now. We saw it in the NAWCQ and carrying on to the EUWCQ, and Sunsi just had mentioned this. I noticed this, and other players noticed this, an all-time low of players who have had past success making it into the top cut of the EU and NAWCQ. And some people will argue, obviously, you're not supposed to top every time. That is true, but I think that that's ignorant to say. Obviously, there's variance in Yu-Gi-Oh, but people don't understand the amount of time people are putting in to get ready for these events. And you can say, well, that's your fault, it's just a game. But these are the people that are always doing well, that are doing this. And for them to put that much time into the game, and then you look at the top cut, and it's only 4 or 5 names that you recognize in the top 64 environment. And once you get to top 8, top 4, for the EU at least, once you get to top 8, is barely any names that you recognize. EU or NA, we had some names. We had people like Mike Adichie, who consistently did well this season. This was a great season for him. First after the points, wins the national championship, well deserved. But once you got to the top 64, it was only like 6 or 7 people, and a lot of the people in the top 64. And I said this on one of my last stream when I got back from nationals. I felt like most of the top 64 for nationals, this was like their first top. Which is crazy to say because Nationals is the last event of the year. It's the most important event of the year. People have been testing hundreds of hours to prepare for this event, and barely anyone topped. Like Christian Urena didn't top. Hani didn't top. Crystal LeBlanc has topped pretty much every event this year, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. He did not top. I can go on. Jesse didn't top. Like, no one topped this event. The format, in my opinion, from what I played of this format, is very RNG. The decks right now are so good that if you go first, you're like in a crazy advantage state just by winning the dice roll that I didn't feel was a factor in the last Snake Eye format. In the last Snake Eye format, when we were doing Puzzle Amino in 38, I didn't feel that if I went second, I lost the game. I felt that I can play a game. I had cards in my deck. My hand traps worked properly. And I was able to break their board or stop them from putting up a board. They went SP pass, and then it was my turn to play. Now, and Hani said this the other day. I was talking with Hani. I was in a Discord call with Hani, and he said it perfectly. He said that right now, game one, if you draw 2 hand traps, you have to put it on God. Because if you draw 2 hand traps in the current format, you don't win. Like, last format, when you drew double hand trap with Snake Eye, you felt comfortable that you were able to play a full game. And it was just a matter of drawing 2 hand traps. But now when you draw 2 hand traps, game one, Hani's like, you just have to put it on God. Like most of the time, your 2 hand traps are just not going to stop them. You have to hope that they draw subpar and then play for game 3 when you have 3 hand traps. You're siding it to 25 hand traps, so you have a high chance of drawing 3 because you feel like 3 is the number you need in order to beat your opponent. And then when you draw 3 hand traps, if they draw one of their side deck cards, you still lose the game. If you draw 3 hand traps and they draw a crossout, you lose. If they draw tactics, you lose. If they set a skill drain, you lose. Because most of your hand has to be hand traps in order to stop them from setting up a board that wins immediately. It's really bad right now. And people are opting to play other decks. Like we saw Santoli, and I talked to Ryan. Ryan was like, I think the solution to this Snake Eye format, and this is what Ryan told me, is don't play Snake Eye. He said play a different deck that you don't have to play this mirror match game with them. Because this mirror match game is a losing battle. You're just praying that you draw the right combination of hand traps, that they draw the wrong combination of engine. If they draw more than 2 engine in their hand, they're cooking you. It's really, really not fun right now for a lot of players. And a lot of players feel discouraged because of the WCQ season. And they're just like, okay, I need to take a break. And it's not like, okay, this is a flash in the pan issue and in the future is going to get better. Well, we're about to get a new Max C card. Like, we're getting more floodgates that Konami is releasing in the next sets, which is more of a Konami OCG thing. I think Konami TCG, from what I understand, oh, wait, my bad. Magna search. I'm sorry, I'm playing a game in the background. From what I understand, Konami TCG is trying their best in order to manage the TCG differently than the OCG. That's why we don't have cards like Maxi. Certain cards that are legal in the OCG we do not have here. They're trying their best in order to manage the game in a way that will be enjoyable for everybody. However, the cards that we're getting from the OCG, I think that a lot of the card design, and I'm not the first person to say this, they had Maxi in mind when they're designing these cards. And they still end up being broken in the OCG. Like, I can understand a OCG game developer testing the Fiendsmith cards and being like, okay, well, if they draw Maxi, this is like kind of manageable, right? Like, this is crazy if they don't, but if you have Maxi, like, maybe this is like fine, right? But then when we get these cards in the TCG, there's just no Maxi. And these cards do a lot. Like, the ceiling of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at an all-time high. I'm not going to say that Snake Eye is a better deck than Tearlament. It's nowhere near comparable to Tearlament. I don't think I can ever compare it to Tearlament. Because Tearlament was just a different animal. Who said this? I was talking to Gabriel Susi the other day, and he was like, Snake Eye is a weird tier 0 deck, or he wouldn't even necessarily consider it tier 0, because he was like, other tier 0 decks in the past, they beat you because their engine is just better than every other engine in the game going first or second. So going first or second, Tearlament could have no hand traps in their deck or have 6 hand traps in their deck. You build your board and Tier will break your board and kill you and beat you. And if they go first, they beat you. But Snake Eye is not like that. And I think it's very apparent. If Snake Eye goes second and doesn't draw hand traps against, let's say, Yubel or against Memento, you're probably going to lose the game. So Snake Eye inherently has to play a lot of hand traps because the engine is not good enough to break boards consistently. The deck can sometimes break boards, but if you play Snake Eye, you know most of the times you're winning going second is because you're hand trapping your opponent to death, and then they can't answer a Snake Eye Ash because it does too much by itself. Or you have Snake Eye Ash plus a Witch and you just win the game. But Snake Eye needs hand traps in order to win going second because the engine is too fragile into boards. The engine can't break boards apart. But yeah, so we're in a format where we have to play a lot of hand traps in order to stop our opponent from beating us when they go first, which causes us to, when we go first, we have low engine counts and it's hard to play the game. When you go second, you're at a huge disadvantage. You're pretty much, I think going second, you're losing the game most of the time right now, which is a really bad feeling in Yu-Gi-Oh! That when you go second, you're at a huge disadvantage. I know someone on Chris on Twitter, he said that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at an all-time high skillfulness-wise. I don't disagree with that statement. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Skill-wise, as a game as a whole, is more skillful than it might have been a while ago, right? I wasn't playing back then. This is him saying that, and he's been playing for a long time, and I can understand that because I watch people play Edison, I watch people play GOAT. There's a lot more options that you have now than you had then, and it's a lot more things for you to take into consideration. Whenever you're playing your deck, you have to think about hand traps, you have to think about board breakers, you have to think about sequencing more than just like normal summon Alias, set Gemini Spark, set Call the Haunted, pass. You know, like it's a lot more things to think about. But I think that this format, or the format that we've been in, and you can say it as a whole for Snake Eye format. For most people, they would feel the same way for the whole of Snake Eye format. I feel a little bit differently. I think that Snake Eye before the Fiendsmith cards was a skillful mirror match. You could say it was throwing hand traps at each other, but I think that when hand traps work and you're able to get into these simplified game states, I think that the game is pretty fun. I think the game was pretty fun last format, where you double hand trap your opponent, they end on the SP, then you get double hand trapped and you go to Hida, and then you end on a half board, and then it's just a battle of beat sticks and trying to pull ahead and advantage. I thought that was fun, but what's going on right now is not very fun. It's not very fun for me, and it's not very fun for people that I talk to. So yeah, I think that the ban list in August that we're getting next month after Sacramento has to do a lot for the game right now. I think there's a hand. I made a ban list prediction, but I think that there's a lot of cards that should probably be banned on this next ban list in order to kind of reset the game how they did at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, where they banned Electromite. They banned like a major card from every of the good decks, and even the tier 2 decks all got banned cards in order to try to reset the deck, and then that was the beginning of COVID, and we had Adamantipator and stuff. I think they have to do something very similarly, where every deck that is relevant, even down to maybe, I would even say to go as far as back to AGOV format, any of those decks that are still relevant, I think should all be getting hit on this next ban list. I think that we need a soft reset to go into the new year and with new sets. I think that a lot of, or the way that I would personally do it, I don't know if Konami is going to do it. I made a ban list, like I said, I made a ban list prediction, which had like a couple of cards getting hit that are like super relevant in the format. But I think if they want to get a lot of people back into the game, there's like two main things that they have to do. One, improve the pricing. I have a feeling that they're going to improve the pricing, because even if we saw the new regional season, this is like a little thing, this might mean nothing, right? We saw the engraver mat, cool, it's a nice mat, but we saw like the deck box change, now it's a 2-player deck box. Yay! So maybe that's like a sign, because we don't know what the new YCS pricing is going to be. Maybe that's copium as hell, but we don't know what the new YCS pricing is going to be. Hopefully, and I mean this, hopefully they improve the pricing and make it so that we're getting new prize cards that are not these another verse cards, or we're getting just better pricing in general. Upping the pricing, I think, would help a lot. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, I think the ban list in August has to, we have to clear up all of the Diabell Star, Snake Eye, Wanted, this whole storyline right now in the game. All of that stuff has to be cleared up. All of it has to be cleared up on this next ban list. We have to get rid of all these cards. Or hit everything. Everything has to be hit that has been relevant for the last year. Because if they hit Snake Eye, it's not just a matter of Snake Eye at this point. Because if they hit Snake Eye, then Yubel will be the best deck by far. So they can't just hit Snake Eye. Because Yubel is not much better for the game if it's the best deck. So they have to hit Snake Eye. They have to hit Yubel. If they hit those two decks, they have to hit Tenpai. Tenpai just won European Nationals and the deck is toxic to play against. Obviously, it's interesting. It's something new. It's a go second deck. We haven't really seen those. But it's toxic. It should also be hit. And the same thing should be said about other decks in the format. Cards like Dimensional Shifter should be hit. Branded should be hit. Branded has been playable for a long time. And while Branded has never really went back to the top, like how it was at the beginning of when it came out, where it was the best deck, has never really returned to that status. It's still at full power. Albion the Sanctifier, Puppet Lock, Eidos the Mythical Beast, like Branded Fusion, all these cards should be hit. And even a deck like Rescue Ace could potentially be hit again. Honestly, like Turbulence is an ignorant card. That deck is still good. It's just not seeing any play right now because of everything else that's going on. So yeah, there's a lot of changes that can be made in the format in order to make things better and then make people more enthusiastic about the game. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this type of content, this type of raw, unedited content, make sure to subscribe to the JNC channel, and I will talk to you guys next time. Have a great day.